Call the committee meeting of the Buildings, Property, and Cemetery open, and it is now 5:07. And let's go ahead and start this continuation of our meeting. Let's go ahead, Phil.
I'm going to ask if it's okay with everybody, if we could add one item to the agenda that would be, or two items, excuse me, Green Hill Cemetery. I think Barbara would like to discuss that as well, and if we can add that to the agenda, as well as I have David Varner here with Lake Country Internet who would like to make presentation. This is on the council's agenda, but I thought since we were meeting tonight, it would make sense to hear a little bit about the potential for wireless broadband in the town of Blackstone. And if it's agreeable to everybody, I'll add those two items to the agenda.
Okay. Okay.
All right, moving on. Cemetery appeals, if we want to just follow the agenda. We have two appeals here. I see Mr. Franz is here, and this is probably the more pressing of the two. It's an 8-grave section. Okay, so everybody knows what we're talking about. In the cemetery is divided by blocks. Each block is divided into sections, and then each section is a certain number of graves. Okay. This is an 8-grave section in the cemetery, and it's entitled to have one upright headstone in the center of the block. We've already asked council some time ago, because there's a Mr. Moore that's buried in that same 8-grave section. And if you remember, we had an appeal because they wanted to put an individual headstone on Mr. Moore's grave, and there's a picture of that. And that was granted by council probably a year plus ago. The town's policy says one upright headstone in the 8-grave section. Council waived it, so this could be put there. Mr. Franz had a footstone, and each of the 8 graves is entitled to one footstone flush to the ground. And so Mr. Franz has purchased a stone, and it was put in as flush per our directions to the monument company. But I think the gentleman is here to make appeal to stand her back up. Okay. And this would be a second upright in the 8-grave section. Okay. If you'd like to speak or if you have anything to present, is it okay, Mr. Chairman? Okay, Madam Chairman?
Thank you. On November the 6th, I bought this grave marker, not knowing the regulations of the cemetery. And it was, really, I didn't know it was an 8-grave plot. And when my grandson was passed away, he was buried there, the plot was given by the Barrow family, I believe, was given to them so he would have a place to, to be laid to rest. And I came up and purchased a wedge type upright, little small headstone to put in the top at the head of his grave. And the Simmons Monument Company called me and told me that they couldn't do that. They had to be, by the town regulations, had to be laid flat. So I got a wedge sitting there laying in the ground, flat up there. And all I wanted was to get y'all's permission if I could have it put at the head of the grave upright. It's like 20 inches wide by 10 inches high, and about 4 inches deep at the bottom.
If you look at this drawing, approximately where the orange flowers are, is where it will be approximately. And your grandson, he's been in the cemetery for a very good while.
Yeah, a couple of years.
2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, he died in 2000, October, I think, in 2016. Yeah. I believe that's on the great.
November 29th.
Yeah. Yeah.
2016.
Yeah.
So it'd be where the flowers are in a wedge shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we're showing them now. It's right here now.
It's right
Look
here.
at it.
This is it.
Who else owns the rest of the 8-grave spot?
You know, I don't know exactly. It is owned by a McKittrick family. I don't know what the relationship is.
Yeah, there's no relationship.
But if you look at the 4 cornerstone in our records, it has the last name McKittrick, M-C-K on this cornerstone.
Okay.
And I don't know what the relationship with the Moore gentleman was.
Well, I see, I looked up, I was up at the scene and looking around. And I see a little marker there that said MK, with CK.
MCK, that's
Right beside
McKittrick.
his, right beside
There
it.
should be 4 on the 8th grade section.
Yeah.
Right. And as far as we know, the McKittrick family would be under this law.
But since it's broken up into different other family members rather
It
than
looks like
the
they've been
McKendrick.
donating
Yeah,
to other people
yeah.
or donating.
Kind of changes the whole dynamic of that particular 8.
And I'm asking because obviously if it's one stone that's elevated, that's fine. But in 8 graves, what if all 8 of them are then gonna be elevated? Then that's where it creates the issue. If it's just one, you know, that's not a big issue because you can mow around one. But you can't get between 7 of them.
So the Moore, are they related to the McKittricks?
I think they are, but I don't know that to be 100% fact. But our records do show McKittrick, and the 4 corner monuments say McKittrick, or MCK.
I know where JD is buried at. There's a little wooded area right down below it, and there's a creek. He's, to me, he's the last one
I
down.
think he is the last.
Yeah.
Where is this located? I mean, what
You
section?
see where my truck is parked?
Yeah.
If I kept on going straight, I'd go across that little culvert bridge.
Okay.
Down the very
You
bottom.
remember where Clarence Simpson was there?
Gotcha. You're in the very bottom.
Very last section, or last block on the right-hand side.
So could they be split?
Can they be split? Yeah, I don't think it's unusual. I think, like, we oftentimes have the western half of section 27, or the western, or the eastern half. So yeah, some of these 8th grade sections have been split over the years. This has not. This is still just a straight up 8th grade
How old is
section.
that rule that tells you where to put it?
Excuse me?
How old is the rule that tells you where to put it? Regulation.
That predates all this cemetery policy. It's always been one upright headstone in a 8th grade section. Centered in the 8th grade section.
And that's what he got?
If you, my finger's about where the 8th grade section center is, roughly. And logically or typically, there would be one
One
upright
big.
stone with a name on it, McKittrick or Moore or Franz or whatever on there. And then there would be 8 permissible flush footstones, 4 on each stone. It was it's been part of the deal for a very long time. But the monument company did what we asked them to do, which you have to make it flush. But again, Mr. Franz was wanting to have a waiver of that.
So if you split it, could you split it in half and like the Moore be on this side and
Now,
the Friends be
I
on this
think our
side?
policies do say if you're gonna split them, you have to split them in a north-south radius, or
So it would be this
Four-
way, and it would be this way instead of this way, is what
yeah,
you're
yeah,
saying?
yeah. That would be east-west if we were to do it.
I know that he would be the only one buried there, you know, there won't be no other family member of his family be buried there, that's it. So, that, like I said, that plot was donated to his mom, because his mom didn't have the money to buy a plot, so.
But the McKittricks or whoever still own the rest of it.
6 of them.
the 6 that have not been used. So they could come up and have somebody on either side or,
For our purposes, the McKittrick still own all 8,
correct.
because there wasn't a transfer from McKittrick to Franz or McKittrick to Moore. We don't keep track of those all the time, those things can happen, but our record shows that McKittrick owned 8 lots over there. Now, family members do it all the time, and it's not unusual that, you know, or donated to somebody or something like that, that goes down, but our records show all 8 are still on the McKittrick.
Do you know the McKittricks?
I don't,
Oh.
man.
You're not from.
I say McKittrick, maybe McKissick.
Yeah, I don't even.
I was. I
I've never
know.
heard
I
of
know
them, so-
McKissicks.
I think it may be McKissick, and I apologize if I've said it incorrectly.
Alice and Aubrey McKissick.
It may
As
be
far as I knew.
related to them. I'll go pull the books if you got one.
That's McKissick, not McKittrick.
The reason I asked that question, that's my grandfather,
The grandfather?
Claus,
Pardon?
grandfather Claus.
Oh. Well, the rules didn't change on this one. This was on the books before we changed the policies. It's been on the county policies. for
And the
years.
other, and the council, previous council has already made an appeal for that other,
For the more.
for the Moore. I would recommend that we go ahead and allow that being a headstone, since this is our.
And I agree, I'm fine with it, just as long as there any way that we can keep from one being on either side. I mean, cause then that's your maintenance issue. He's the first, so I think that's fine, yeah. But the rest of them I would think need to be flush. Cause you can drive over with a mower if they're flush.
Now, I will tell you, the Moore, that was the stone where Mr. Kyle had informed somebody they could put it up, and it really
And
wasn't.
it really wasn't approved, yeah,
So we had to come to you guys and ask you for
after the fact.
an appeal. So that was a town move and resolved with a motion by council.
Yeah.
If you remember that.
Okay, that's right.
I mean, it could be that we, as a committee, have it as policy, you know, if we do, we keep in mind that in his situation here, that it's not gonna create a hindrance for maintenance. But on, say if the grave, if they wanna put one on the grave next to them, they have to make an appeal. Then we start, I mean, we have to look at it maintenance-wise. So the first one's fine, but then if 6 or 8 other ones come in that same vicinity, then it creates the maintenance issue.
So then the owner of these 8 grave lots are the McKissicks, and they don't even have a headstone yet. So then, are they gonna come and ask for a
It may
headstone
very
as
well, I
well?
don't know. Maybe right back here again
Yeah,
at some point.
well, for the time being, though, how do you wanna vote on, having the, that changed to a headstone and up at his upright position, which is like a 45-degree angle, I believe?
It is,
Yeah,
yes.
45.
And it does have a plus that it's in an area where the grass really doesn't grow that much down there.
It's not the.
We actually
the
fight
prettiest,
we fight to have grass down there, so,
It's up under the trees and it doesn't,
yeah.
it's not beautiful.
I would go with it if you make the motion, just knowing that the next person, if they wanna be buried next to him, it's gonna probably need to be a flush mount.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. What do you think, Barbara?
Yeah,
You're with
I
that?
agree with that.
Okay. So your motion is to allow it with a codicil of having the next one being a flush mount?
they would need, the adjacent ones would need to be flush mount.
Everything else has to be flush.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
First come, I mean, that was the first one to come around, so.
okay, all right. So we take that to council then?
Monday
who's-
night,
Monday
so
night.
council vote on it. I don't know if you need to be here for that, if you feel like driving all the way back.
You
But
don't come.
I'm all the way in Richmond, so.
So you made the motion, who seconded it?
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Monday night, you'll get a final vote, and then Tuesday, I can send you an email and see if
Appreciate it. Thank y'all so much.
You're welcome, have a good day.
See,
All right.
Hey, thank you for coming, appreciate it. All right, the Daniel Stone, they're not here today, so if you'd like, we can, I'm not being pressed on it, but I showed Christine, this Daniel Stone. It is in the correct location, it is in the center of an 8-grave section. And Tommy's footstone is appropriately located, and that's fine. Tommy's widow would like to slide it over one space.
So it's on his grave.
So it's actually on his grave, but that wouldn't be the center again.
But then once she passes, I mean, God forsake that happens anytime soon, but is there gonna be another headstone?
Could be. But the Daniel, if you look at the back side of the Daniel stone, it says Patterson on it already. It's already been, so I think the intention is, and I don't know who the Pattersons are, maybe family, maybe children.
That's her side.
Is that her family?
Yeah.
Okay. The Patterson's on the other side of the stone. So, no, I don't think there should be another upright stone.
Correct.
I don't think that that would be appropriate. If you do slide it over, because they've already put the other name on the backside.
So you slide it over, does it still keep in line with all the other graves?
It's off one.
Off one.
And I think the purpose of.
So the graves, looking at them here, are in line this way?
Yep.
This way, not, okay. I see what
It'll be in line on the north-south axis, but it wouldn't be in line on the east-west axis. Would it be? But it's in the center of those 8 graves, and Tommy's footstone, as you can see, is put in the right location. We met with the monument company and told them where to put it, and then I received notice from the family they wanted to slide it over. So, if you want to come back and we'll get this one next time, we can certainly do it. Make sure the family's here, and we
And
can do that.
like we talked about last time, to prevent that, if we could have a diagram of the 4 and 8.
I think what we're gonna do, I think the policy now, everybody's got to sign and say, I read the or I received the policy, not read it, so whether it gets read or not is altogether different. But what I do think is, we need to get them to sign the monument location as well. Our diagram just shows 8 lots. I think we need to put a monument in the middle of those 8 lots and say,
And then when we come up, this is just for future reference, Jennifer, when we come up with an appeal, can we zoom in close enough to get an aerial because it'll give you better ideas
Yeah.
to, if you move it over one spot, how does it affect the maintenance if a
How do
mower?
you know I was the photographer in this?
Because you always take pictures. So, and this is just pulling up on Google Maps or something and being able to zoom in to that grave.
That might be something else you have to teach me.
If you wanna wait on this one, we certainly can do that.
Look, shall we
Yeah,
wait?
that's
We'll hold
fine.
off on this one? Okay, we'll table.
I just want to be clear on the cemetery thing. Alright, as of March 1st, everything must go except for American flag or Confederate
The
flag.
first full week of March. So that would
That's
be,
what I'm saying.
so that'd be the 4th through the 8th.
You're saying everything has to go but the flag. So what date do we get to put back?
After the 8th, that Friday.
The 8th.
So the 9th, you can go, that Saturday, you can put stuff back on.
Okay. That's for everybody. right?
Yes, that's everybody. We said the first full week of March, so that's gonna be the 4th through the 8th. And then, so anytime after that, you're good.
And there's some angels in the cemetery and statues, you and I picked one up that had blown over the other day. We'll see how that turns out, make sure
And the
everybody
big one?
understands. Huh?
And the big one?
That's a big one, and we'll have that discussion with the property owner.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. All right, so were there any other appeals this morning?
Nope.
Moving right along.
Moving right along. Town Square Rules and Regs. Mr. Whitlow has drawn up a rental.
And it's beautiful,
It is very nice.
very nice.
And it is in your packet if you'd like to present anything that you'd like to discuss with anyone.
I just took basically a little bit from the sample application that we had and kind of scrolled through it and took what I thought was more relevant to what we typically have here in Blackstone. And I left the rental fees or anything blank. I didn't know if anybody wanted to do that, if it was tabled for.
I think the biggest change is, would this apply to a for-profit venture?
That's where we got hung up last time.
That's the start of the whole discussion. And it doesn't specify you have to be nonprofit.
No, I think the application is for nonprofit, for-profit, whoever has.
If you wanna have a birthday party out there, I mean, it's supposed
For everything.
But that's when it was raised to us before by another for-profit business. Is it fair to create a new business location, I guess, for the event, for another said for-profit business, without a fee?
That's the deeper issue.
Yes, that's where, I've read through this looks good, yes. But
Would
the
that be,
fee is where you get hung up.
would that be something that we'd have to have a public meeting on?
I think right now it's nonprofits only, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, because council has the right to approve. It says nonprofit, but council has the right to approve. There was some question that the council had acted inappropriately. I don't think that's the case. I think that the policy that's in place for it now allows for council to be an appeal here. I don't think I can, or Jennifer can, or Zach can allow a for-profit venture, but I think you guys were acted appropriately for the, whatever the concert was.
Yeah.
and
The one that got rained out.
Right.
But I think the question is now is do we wanna charge for profits, right?
I think, do you want to continue having for-profit activities is probably the deepest issue. And I think that's the one that was raised by some of the other motions.
Because the for-profit, like, Ms. Hasbrook mentioned, could pay for a public restroom.
That's true. That's true. You have some money coming in. But then, and you could pay for somebody to keep it clean, because that's that would be a problem.
So what's your pleasure, folks?
All right, I can tell you, this is not an easy one, because whether you do it or don't, you're gonna catch it from both ways.
Cause somebody almost tore me in two pieces for voting against the smoke. I told them it's about, I support them because I buy from them, but it's a health issue for some people. So, you have to look at it from every side.
So let's say, for instance, the, people that sell the vegetables and stuff.
That's farmers,
Tax exempt,
as long as they're
as long as they grow.
farmers market, as long as they farm it
So-
themselves.
But,
And I have made that clear.
Yes.
but now do they, are they a for-profit? I mean, do they make a profit off of it? Would you consider them that they
They're
would have to pay
they're
a fee?
excluded in the state code because
would-
they're a farmer.
But would you include them as they're making a profit? Should they
Not
be
if-
charged for
Not
the
if
space?
Zach is, it's sponsored by DBI.
If he like sells his own, and I told him every morsel of food has to be grown by him.
Yeah.
He's exempted from like tariff merchant taxes and any.
And I would think
business
that's an event that's sponsored by DBI. It's their farmer's market. So I wouldn't know. I would think that that's covered under DBI itself.
Well, we don't have to, I guess, have to make a decision about this now, and keep it as we are right now. Let's get the application process in place. And the businesses who want to use the town square can still do that. They just have to come and request from
What
the town
did-
council.
The time that it was used with the brew house, obviously everybody knows, so there's no need to keep it a secret. What, did they get charged anything?
Did they what?
Did they get charged anything?
I don't know if they had to get the insurance policy.
Yeah, but
$400
we didn't
bucks,
charge
I can't
anything, did we,
remember
for
Were
them?
they,
No, the town didn't charge anything, but anybody that has alcohol involved has to do the $1 million.
Correct. but they were also said that they would compensate for any
Overtime.
overtime. Was that done?
I
or-
don't know. I'll check.
But-
I'd have to check with Allison or the chief.
But that is when the question came up, because he suggested, because I think they were having food vendors and stuff like that, so should they be charged for the space?
For the use of it.
Right.
Out of curiosity, is it technically a for-profit event if somebody has, like the brew house event, but it's free to the public, but there is a food or drink served that they have the choice to buy, but it's not a ticketed event?
Mhm.
Is that still a for-profit event?
It's so many
Yeah.
ways around it. It's just,
I would say it's for-profit. It doesn't have non-profit status.
I definitely, no matter what, I mean,
It's
outside the
for-profit.
fees, if it is a for-profit that has taken place before, they need to pay for the barricades, they need to pay for the overtime of extra police or whatever, all that we need to make sure that that's,
I think the easy way would put a set fee on it.
yeah,
Porta-john,
correct.
overtime for 2 officers, all that kind of stuff. You say it's 400, like we do with the baseball fields,
Correct.
whenever somebody does run into
And it's $75 for a one use of the porta-john, like for the weekend, when we get it, so that's $75 if we have to get that, and then whatever else, like, you know, the men setting up stuff, the town workers doing that, so. If you wanted to set a fee, you need to include all that in there.
All right, well, like Christine said, we can approve this as it is, minus the fees. Can you come up with what it would be for, say, 2 guys per hour,
It'll be something like $300.
plus
Porta-john.
Porta-john? Come up with what that is, and then bring it back to us, and we'll see.
Yeah, just do that.
So do you wanna
A
hold,
quantifiable figure.
do you wanna hold off on the application and just do it all at one time? Is that what you're saying, that you wanna approve the application?
Do we have people rushing to apply right now?
There's not really events January and February. I mean, once we get to late spring, probably people.
And anybody can come to council and ask them. That's part of the initial, that you
Appeal,
guys
yeah.
can hear a request and review.
Well, there's no need in voting on this, I guess, now, and then
Add
a
the
month
fees,
from now,
change-
come back
change
and
it again.
go to
Okay.
fees again, so.
We'll put this on hold then, and table it.
Ask for
and,
Philip to
till
come
we
up with fees, is that
Come up
correct?
with a couple of fees for,
What is the town's out-of-pocket expense if it were a for-profit venture?
I think certainly the Porta-john, and, you know, if you think about it, a police officer with benefits is probably $22 an hour.
they need tables, chairs.
Well, that's what he can put in there that. if
We don't
it's-
usually do too much on the table stuff unless it's a DBI event. I would like to not get into all that, but
Okay.
we do deliver barricades perhaps, or garbage
If the event's
cans,
on a Saturday and 2 guys have to come in to put the barricades up, and
things like that. We close the street, something like that. Then there is a pretty significant expense if the street does get closed, because we have guys standing there at either end of the barricades trying to direct traffic. So I think there should be a price for
Okay.
use, and then another price if you're gonna close the street.
Okay.
If DBI decides that they're gonna use it, then certainly we can waive those
take it
costs.
out of Zach's paycheck.
I'll bring you figures back.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, let's move right along. Armory grants.
I think the next item is Armory grants. I think last time we talked, you guys wanted to know where there was money available. And what I've given you here is a list, instead of me retyping a list, but this is When Fast C notified us that they were coming to town, they did a community-wide planning effort where they sat down and they provided us with a list of different facility and utilities and infrastructure improvement grants, okay, where the town can go to look for them. And yes, I don't think we need to worry about the ones that are specific to water and sewer, but I do think if you look at the USDA Rural Development, which is on the bottom of the first page, I think that there's some merit to USDA. I don't think my experiences with Peggy Jordan and USDA when we requested funds previously and what was available, that they're terribly interested in putting it into the building. And I think if you look, it says
More like creating certain jobs.
well, they're more interested in doing things like furnishings. They're more interested in doing things like computer internet, wiring, computers, those kinds of things. The additional. I don't think their money necessarily will go
They want
into
you to
the.
put your skin in the game with the building construction side.
And we can certainly ask, and I've talked with USDA, 3 or 4 years ago about something like this. And that was back after we went to South Boston and looked at the building down there, that there was some interest by USDA to do that sort of thing. Telemedicine is also very popular. I don't know if that dovetails with Bon Secours, but USDA does have money in specific to furnishings, wiring, internet, technology improvements, any of those kinds of things. I think USDA would participate. I do think that USDA can be, like any federal agency, a little more lengthy and bureaucratic. You know, they can take a long time. It's not a state agency. It's not as streamlined, perhaps. But USDA, we've used them in Amelia several times, and specifically that business and industry grant. If you guys have ever driven down 360 and seen where Superior Walls factory is, behind Hardee's, that was put in, and the site work was all done with a BNI grant, 2 BNI grants. Okay. Pardon?
Not here.
Oh, in Amelia, yep. I do think that there's monies available for facilities, and this is 20-some years of fooling with these things. I've never applied for an EPA grant, which is on the first page, but I do think there's some sensibility on the green or LEED improvements. If we want to do that as part of the construction project, I think trying to make it as a LEED project, I do think that there's some assistance in there. That's basically what do we turn the street lights into? They were
LED.
LEDs, yeah, exactly. Blah. So I think that there's some ways to create some energy efficiencies in the building.
That would be the EPA green and infrastructure one you're talking about? Okay.
I think that's where I would probably find the EPA to be helpful. On the,
So again, after you put the cost of construction of the building for the most part.
they're interested in lighting, that sort of thing, heating systems perhaps, geotech or geothermal perhaps. If we continue on, again, USDA, I've used them on water and sewer facilities before, and I've used them on business and industry grant. There's actually an office in Farmville, or there was an office in Farmville, and very helpful local folks. And I think that there is some money, but I don't think it's so much for the construction of the facility. It may be parts of the facility like lighting or heating systems or computer or wiring or that sort of thing. That is my experience with USDA. Okay. And I think with the business and industry grant, you got to have a private user. And I do also think that they try to cap it at a certain amount. Anything above, or 10 years ago, anything above $100,000 fell into a more competitive category. And I think that the local office can approve under $100,000 business and industry grants if it's decided to do in our private sector. Okay. I'm not familiar with sustainable communities and that sort of thing. We can certainly look at that. Moving on to, I think this funding resources, the state is where I'm on more familiar territory. Walter Mackey brought up a couple ideas, one of which was be an environmental grant for abatement activities, okay? And that is a real deal. The folks at the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, in conjunction with DEQ, do have a program for cleaning, like underground storage tanks and different things like that. There is a LUST fund, leaking underground storage tank, that may be appropriate, because I think there are some heating oil tanks over there. That's what we used when we took the tanks out at the town shop last year or the year before.
Well, for instance, with Brownfield, and whether you're for or against it, obviously, whether we keep it and renovate it, or whether we dispose of it and go back to a private sector, that has to be cleaned up no matter what, correct?
Well, I think if you're going to use the building, yeah, I don't think that the lead-based paint is to be dismissed. I think it's something that really should be abated. If people are going to be going in there, especially kids. And I think that's one of the contentions from a lot of folks about using it is it a healthy environment? Okay? The asbestos, the same thing.
My question is, say if our town-wide voting day, say if we end up doing that, and we dispose of the building or keep it, again, whichever it is, because it could go either way. But does it increase the marketability of the building
I mean,
if it's clean?
absolutely. If you're looking at another building as an individual and you're interested in buying, or you as a realtor representing a building, it's a whole lot easier giving them a
Clean bill of
phase
health.
2 environmental study that work been done. Absolutely.
But
Because
is it
that's
a
gonna be the first
necessity? Is it a necessity? Do you have to?
Do we have to? I do think if the building's going to continue to be used, I think you need to.
Well, no, but if we were to dispose of it,
No,
you have to.
don't have to. But I do think that there are some, in the realty world, there's some disclosures that we'll
Right,
probably need
that's
to make.
right.
Things that we know, and it's hard to say these are factual, but we know there's asbestos in there. We know there's lead-based paint. We know there's I think that's a disclosure. Say if Barbara were to list the property,
have to.
she would have to provide that information to a prospective buyer. I think she would have a moral obligation, or professional ethics would require her to do that.
And the price, the listing price would probably have to be adjusted
Yeah.
because of
If you do the
that.
brownfield, yeah.
I definitely think that there's some money there. John Loftus with the VEDP, and I have spoken about the project, and it's real, it's there, and I think it could be applied for. It is a 50-50 grant, okay? If we find the underground storage tank is actually leaking, or we have some free petroleum in the
Bigger.
groundwater,
Figure take it.
there is a LUST fund, and again, we tapped into that last year, and Cornerstone Engineering helped us quite a bit, and he filled out all the paperwork, but there's a bit of a contamination issue, groundwater contamination issue at the old town shop, and we removed 2 underground tanks, and we put free floating foam in 2 of them that were inside and under the concrete. So there's some environmental options there, but I do think you're looking on the VEDP, Economic Development Partnership Project. I think you have a 50-50 match. Okay.
Most of them are gonna be 50-50, aren't they?
My familiarity with those kinds of programs, unless you have a leaking underground tank, then it becomes much better. The only thing they won't pay for is the foam to go into the tanks to fill them up. We had to pay for that out of pocket. Okay, so there is some match on that. And Meade Anderson, I think is a contact person that Walter Mack provided you. He is amazingly helpful. For somebody at DEQ, when you don't like getting those phone calls from DEQ all the time, I take Meade's calls. He's really very
He
helpful.
helps you.
He's proactive and very interested in seeing old buildings renovated and all these kinds of things. I think he's worked with McCormick in Petersburg, and that's how I met him initially. So he is a good resource. He's proven himself to be helpful in more than one occasion.
Any other grants that you have listed here that would be,
If we go back to the state grant, I apologize. I don't have my glasses, so I'm gonna steal the clerk real quick just to read for just.
It looks pretty on you.
I could not read these stinking things.
Small. Still can't read it.
Don't laugh, all right. Under funding resources under the state, I think we're all familiar with block grant. Community Development Block Grant is East End, same kind of project that we're doing with East End. And East End East End is a multifaceted or multi-activity project: water, sewer, stormwater, and housing. We got 4 activities. We're doing the water and sewer, we're splitting the drainage with the state, and they're paying 100% of the housing other than the weatherization contribution that we put to it, okay? That is what I think Mr. Miller was talking about the other night when he said we should wait until we do that project, because there is a second phase of East End, okay? What we're doing now with East End is just the first phase. We'll reapply for the second, like we did on Church Street, do one block or one section, and then you do the next section in the second phase. It's our intention to apply for a second phase. And that second phase logically would include the armory site, because it's the houses and the portions of the neighborhood that abut the armory. And we did that intentionally, if we needed to do that, okay?
But
Plus,
there's still a match.
But I don't think the match will be as dramatic. I think you guys really went out there, I got you all kind of on a limb, and you borrowed $1.5 million. So I don't think we'll have to match as much, but they're not gonna pay for 100% of the armory to be renovated, okay? I think our match to get the grant money would probably be less than what it was for the first phase, but I still don't think it's 100%. Certain it's not 100%.
So what do you think, I mean, just off, and you don't know, obviously, exact, but second phase of East End could be how much total grant? What could it be
I would think we're
1.5,
probably down into
2 million.
maybe a $750,000 request
for the whole grant?
for the grant portion, and then us probably
So, I
doing
mean,
curb and gutter or
in the
portions.
grand
of the
scheme of things, I mean, we know what the armory's price tag could be. So $750,000.
So, but remember, this big East End grant, we were doing multiple houses. We only got 1.2 million. Remember? So use that as a benchmark, and that was the most we could apply for. 1.25 was the cap for the activities that we had presented, okay? We'll have the water and sewer for the most part done, so that won't be an activity.
No,
So I think 1.25, I can tell you, because we'll do some more curb and gutter and drainage stuff, around the Quonset hut on Harris Street where water stands pretty badly. I think $1.25 million, my personal opinion, based on the number of activities that are being accomplished, community facility or armory, housing, drainage, I think 1.25 is gonna be okay. And that's what we were able to apply for. But remember, 125 also does the housing portion of it. Okay? That's why I say it's gonna be somewhere south of that, maybe $750,000. That could go towards the armory, something like that. But they're not gonna do anything unless we address the housing. That's their baby, that's where they're at.
Well, that's what the purpose of the grant's for. is-
I don't think there could be more than 125, and then you gotta cut out the housing portion out of that.
How many houses are you doing over there?
I think in total, both phases, we've estimated about 73 houses.
In East End?
Pardon?
In East End?
It's a big project. It's a great big project. This first phase is
And
significant.
that's not all new construction, that's going in remodeling, whatever.
And some of it's weatherization, some of it's tearing a house down, and some of it is replacing a house. But it's
So-
73 structures over there.
And then, so obviously people that look at the calendar go, all right, when is second phase?
Second phase application would go in 2020, spring of 2020.
So we'll not kick the can, but we'll be
About a
again
year
on
from
hold for another 2 years.
I would say this time in 2021, you'd have a good idea whether you're moving forward. or not.
Another 2 years before,
We were notified
that just makes it hard.
back in the
Being
fall.
that what we've been doing for the past 3-4 months, listening to about the armory for 2 more years.
Do you, when they do it over there, do they take the worst houses, the ones in the worst condition first, or they go in them?
The plan we started with, we started working on the houses, or suggesting to work in a portion of the neighborhood based on how bad the water and sewer was.
Mm-hmm.
When Andre was getting his sewer jetter stuck, or we were having water leaks, that's where we said, this is the worst water and sewer. Because remember, we didn't know we were gonna get the grant.
Mm-hmm.
And so we focused on what do we gotta do with the water and sewer in this portion of it, this block where it's the worst, and that's what dictated phase 1, phase 2. The location and the condition of the water.
And the homes have to be occupied for
It has
anything
to
to
be
be done.
occupied.
Well, one of them that you took me in, nobody could live in that one. I mean, she was living in it, but it was terrible.
Is that bad?
There's need, there's no doubt. Owner-occupied housing is our priority. If we have enough funds to do one house and we have a rental versus an owner-occupied, the owner-occupied gets
Rightfully
priority.
so, I mean,
precedent.
it should.
And, but we have done some rentals, and to tell you the truth, for the landlord, it's a pretty good deal. I mean, there's a lien on the property, but they actually don't make payments. They just have a portion of the lien forgiven every month as they go through on a 10-year note. Okay. I think that the industrial revitalization fund, I think is potential. I think that's what Dave McCormick had initially, remember that time we had the big dust up about applying for a grant and all that? That was an IRS fund, exactly the same. And, but I do think that there's a private or third-party element to it. I don't think that you just get an IRS fund for a town building. I think that it has a third-party element, that there's gonna be activities and things taking place. Walter Mac's very confident in it. I think the IRS applications, if you put in a qualified application, I think if you look at the track record, most get funded. But I think it does take the ownership of the building into a third party. I think you have to have and Walter Mack may or may not, agree with everything I'm saying, but my understanding of IRS is that it needs to be, and it can be just an authority, it can be an LLC created. It doesn't necessarily
You and I
have to be a
met with
business person.
them about the IRF recently, and that was his thing. He said that it had to be
Yeah.
a third hand that had to be in
I'm
it.
parroting the fellow from
Yeah.
DHCD that we met with. What was it,
And-
Torrey McGowan?
And it
Or-
sounded as if the amount of funds is very low. Their budget got cut this year.
Maybe, yeah. These
So
things are
some-
capped at $600,000 a piece, so it may be much more competitive. I don't know. I
Yeah.
haven't dipped my toe in that water anytime recently. There's obviously tobacco funds that could be applied for. I think the county has some grant funds. When I say the county, it's tobacco money that's been earmarked for the county, and I think
Correct.
that's,
Has not all been used.
it's not all been used. So I think there's some earmarked money that could be, if the county were willing to do so, to participate, that would be more grant than it is loan. My experience with private projects in the past 8 years is one project, and that was UMAC. And Frank Ruff and Tommy Wright, who were on the Tobacco Commission and Friends of Blackstone and our representatives, they told me very frankly, this looked like a loan project. Now, there's good and bad to that loan. It was a $5 million loan approved by the Tobacco Commission, but it did have some non-recourse status to it. So,
It had some what?
non-recourse, doesn't show
Okay.
up on yours. It's an individual project loan, it's not so much you're not obligated.
Yeah, me as a project,
As a project, yes,
you wouldn't be held liable for if you defaulted or
as
whatever.
an individual.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's protection.
Good way to say it, better way than I was saying it. So, Tobacco Commission, yes. I think the loan is more likely than the grant. But I think if the county would be willing to part with some of their allocation, there may be some more grant monies available. I think that's basically the same place where we've got the money to do some upgrades at the wastewater plant. If you remember, we've asked the state to give us a 10% increase in capacities to replace some pumps and do more recirculation, and the grant was approved. That was 100% grant money. That didn't cost the county and it didn't cost the town money, but it came out of their annual allocations.
Well, I reached out to Megan at the
Mhm.
county to see if she had any grant ideas, and she's not gotten back with me yet, so.
I think there are some options out there. Again, USDA, I think, is there. I think USDA is not possibly difficult to deal with if you keep the project or the request rather small. Okay. DHCD, I think, is there. DHCD does like that building. I think Zach can tell you that they're pretty consistently interested, and they put money into a planning grant, so I don't think the state would completely shy away from renovating it. But if the state, DHCD, puts their money in it, there's
They
gotta be
must
a
have put a
LMI beneficiary. It's gotta be low moderate income beneficiary. I think 51% of the recipients of services from that building have to be considered LMI.
Our area certainly qualifies for that.
The neighborhood will qualify.
Yeah.
So, what do you? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot because it's a heated topic.
Sure.
But what is the next step in all this? Because I mean, I just feel like, okay, we just gotta wait now and.
We've been messing around with this thing really since 2011. Remember, we sent that grant back and all kinds of stuff. So I think I'm poised, if I get a positive from council, go. But if council's still unsure about what they're gonna do, I don't think there's any need to submit a grant.
So shouldn't the vote happen before?
That's what I'm
I
asking.
think we
is-
need to get a response from
How-
council through whatever means that you get, a community vote or a referendum or whatever it is. When council decides to go, we'll get you the best deal we possibly can find.
And I'll side with the Armor Group on this is how at that point, if you think we may proceed with grant funding,
Mhm.
how do you word that in the voting day as to what the taxpayer's responsibility is?
I just think there's no way that I know for 100% to be covered.
Yeah.
I don't think that's realistic.
It sounds almost like it's gonna be 50-50.
Hmm?
It sounds like it's almost gonna be 50-50 is probably
I think
your
you're gonna
best,
put a pretty good lick in that.
is your
yeah.
best chance,
Yeah,
so.
you can put some money up. And, you know,
I
borrowing
just-
$1 million.
No.
I don't have an amortization schedule in front of me, but you figure 20 years, $50,000 a year, and we're not factoring any taxes or accumulated interest or any of that kind of stuff. So just to serve $50,000 of debt service. Okay? And we're doing very simple math. I'm not trying to amortize it or anything. $50,000 a year will take 3 pennies on the tax rate.
What is our current tax
Actually-
rate in Blackstone?
At 22, and each penny on the tax rate brings about 16.6 cents. $16,600 per penny on the tax rate. Last year, we collected, the last full year that we have of record, $356,000 of general property taxes.
That's our thing. Our property taxes are so low as compared to
Others,
the county or a city.
But we don't have a school system either.
Correct.
All right? So we are at 22 cents a hundred. So you take 356,000 and divide it by 22, and I think you'll see it's about $16,600.
So we're at
per
22 cents. So you say just to do $50,000, it'll take 4 cents.
Well,
Or three cents.
And
So you then
you can't cut a penny, so maybe 4 cents.
But then you're talking about that ours are so low, but the people that live in town also have to pay county
they
as
have to
well.
pay county as well. Correct.
So then,
No, I was talking about the town
right.
collects very little as opposed
Right.
to what a county or a city or Chesterfield or somewhere like that collects. And I can tell you, and again, whether you're for or against it, 3 cents on the tax rate to a lot of people is a decent, I mean,
It's 3 cents to service a $50,000 debt. Now, it's gonna be more than that, because remember, you put the interest in there, it's gonna be significant. But just to pay the principal on $1 million over 20 years, it take 3
and that's why I said a long time ago that it's hard for the 7 of us, and the mayor, of course, included 8, to dedicate and say, all right, we're gonna make our taxpayers pay this. That's why I've said that voting day is a necessity almost. I mean, it's just hard to pledge Phillips or Jennifer's tax dollar on Nottaway Avenue to go to a building that, yes, it'd be a huge asset to Blackstone, but does everybody have the funds to pay for that?
But now, and like the mayor says, what did he say, it was 65% renters in Blackstone?
I think it's probably
So
accurate.
probably a lot of the property owners don't even live in Blackstone.
Correct. I mean, so it
So
would be
the
someone else
people that
paying.
they rent to,
One of the
the property
approaches
owners
many
don't make it.
communities take, not all, but many communities,
Do it
they
on the
use
personal property.
personal property on car tax.
What is our personal property?
Oh, so that's what it'd be, not real estate.
No, I'm speaking of real estate now, but because of that conundrum, we're charging people that don't live here and people that are renting, who are using the service aren't necessarily
Correct.
paying anything. One of the ways to offset that is to increase rates on the,
Personal property.
What do we currently charge? How many
I
cents?
think 65 cents.
65 cents for personal property? Per 100.
When we have restaurants and the hotels they're planned on being built, you're gonna have taxes and fees from that. Could a portion of those funds be put in rather than putting it on the property?
I wish they'd be built. It doesn't seem very hopeful
Yeah.
lately.
Yeah, I know we haven't got, I can't put my eggs,
I wish they were.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I
been
wouldn't
sitting
go out
up
and
here.
borrow money in expectation of having that money.
Every time Philip brings up a great, or someone comes to Philip with a great project, Philip comes to me 2 weeks later. Well, that didn't go through because it's X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
A lot of it is because people see a lot of risk, but I think they're willing to take the risk, but they want assurances from the feds.
That they won't
Fastie's
build.
gonna use the rooms, and Fastie has held firm, start to finish. We don't commit to using rooms until the rooms are constructed or developed and we can inspect them. Go through the Fed room approval process, I think it's an inspection section. Yeah, you can use some of those kinds of things. Keep in mind a few things, and these are just out here on the fringes. I think we're gonna see an increase in electric rates from Dominion this year.
Not on the town's half. It's because it's going to be a pass through.
It'll be straight up from Dominion, yeah. I think you're gonna see Dominion's charges to us increase. Water and sewer, I don't have a specific requirement on water and sewer right now that I know of. Obviously, we got plenty of water lines and things to fix, as we go through the budget. We've been tackling some of our capital projects, trucks and garbage trucks, we're in pretty good shape on bucket trucks, so I don't see a lot and a huge amount of emergency or crisis type things. I think you're gonna see Dominion request a pretty good size increase, which will be offset by a decrease in fuel adjustment. So those of you that don't know.
Not for all of it, but some of it.
Some of it. I think you can, the
The
fuel
citizen,
adjustment coming down will offset about half of the increase that Dominion's asking on base rate.
which is still, trust me, this month is when people start seeing heavy bills. So
Our bill was, from Dominion was $330,000.
we'll start hearing it in 2 weeks. Next week, we'll start hearing it.
Oh, Jennifer wants to move on.
So, well, I mean, it all goes back to the armory. Is how, what is the next step for this council? Because again, it's been so much debate and debacle and chewing each other's heads off. And so, what do we do? I mean,
I think council's got to decide if they want to renovate the armory or not, what they want to do.
again, and that's where I say, I think it needs to be voted on as a community, not. I cannot consciously, and I don't know, I may be chickening out, but I've sat up here, this is my 9th year. I still cannot vote because we can't hear, not everybody will come up to that podium and tell us how they feel.
Oh, sure.
We need to have the vote.
I agree, that's why I brought it up, but it keeps getting shunned off by some, and I don't know why. I mean, if it's a viable project, the community will go with it, but
I mean, I think, like the mayor said, you can get, it's public record to get a list of all the registered voters in Blackstone. And
Notify them.
staff can be in here, we can check IDs, we can do everything. All we gotta do is come up with the questions and set a date.
and that's the big thing, but I do think after last month's meeting, it's just so much.
I don't think I can tell you to put on the ballot, it'll cost you 8 cents. I just think it's gonna be appreciable, and I think if everybody goes in eyes wide open, they gotta understand, we can amortize, say, are you willing for the town to spend $1.5 million? We can do an amortization based on a 4% interest rate,
Yeah.
which is what we've already done recently. I think that would be appropriate. Do an amortization schedule and apply our $16,600 per penny, and that can give you a starting point. Now, if we get a significant amount of grant money, that number can come down.
Can we ask council to get a council member or two, or either a council member and the mayor with, obviously, we want to include the armory group and whoever else, and do it fairly quickly, to come up with questions, 2, 3 questions, whatever it is.
I think the mayor had forwarded some that one of the citizens.
Yeah, that was in your original packet, there were some questions in there.
I saw
But
that.
can't you say armory tax increase, community center tax increase, or nothing?
Or just say, put a figure on it.
Or no figure,
1.5
just say
million.
it's gonna
Yeah,
be a
the
tax
fig-
increase for the armory, it's gonna be a tax increase for the community center, or do nothing. Can't you just say it?
Yeah,
I think either one of them is gonna have a cost attached to it.
when you throw a figure in, it obviously, you don't want to throw a figure in that's going to say it's going to cost $100,000 because it may be way too much, maybe way too little. And then if you put 1.5, I think you may scare people. I'm almost with Jennifer, are you for it with the tax in? Because it's going to increase something, yes.
Something.
Whether we get 50-50 grant, it's going to cost us something. And it may only cost us 2 cents on the tax
Yeah,
rate.
and
But
we're very
that's
lucky
still
with the
considered a
state.
tax rate, a tax hike. So
I don't think you can tell folks it's not gonna cost, because after 25 years of messing with this stuff, I don't know of any project that's
so
been free.
can we as a committee go to the council Monday night and ask for a group to be put together, effective immediately,
Yeah.
to move forward with that?
And maybe have it for April.
And we're still open to grants, but we need to know how the community feels before we just go and randomly submit grant applications.
I think a grant application almost commits you that this is something we wanna do.
Correct,
I
yeah.
think it's a de facto endorsement of the project, or you're not gonna get the grant. If the folks from the state call down here and say, did council agree to this? Well, they're just probing and they're checking, it's probably not gonna garner as much interest from the state.
I want to get as much input from the voters and citizens of Blackstone as we can before we make a decision up here.
I think that's where we're at, I think we need to.
Nine years, and it was going on long before I got here.
So are you saying like one member from council? So
One member and then the mayor, so that's 2, so you can't have any more than 2.
right, and then like
obviously
somebody from the armory group,
someone, or 2, 10, however many from the armored group.
and then someone just from the general public.
Yeah, whoever.
You
And
may
yes.
ask, I think Nathaniel has
Yeah,
been pretty passionate about the community center side of things.
that's fine. Nathaniel and the mayor.
Nathaniel and the mayor may be the best two.
That is
So
perfectly
then
fine.
you want to ask council to nominate a committee at Monday night's meeting, right?
I would like,
Okay.
yes, if that's okay. And Christine, I'm not saying, I don't
No,
think
I
Philip's
think
trying to
that's
step
fine.
on your feet saying Nathaniel, but I think it's a
You
good,
can use the tops of my feet, I'll use the bottoms.
you obviously would be the
He's
fit.
been an advocate for the alternative community center.
Correct.
In the past, so I think that would logically keep him in the loop as well.
I just, I think we're tired of
Tired of it.
the Monday, that last Monday night, just of everything. It's too much debacle going on. We got too many good things in Blackstone going
Great
on,
things.
and it's just overshadowed by so much negativity and everything. So
Moving on.
That's
Okay.
due because a lot of people are doing things that not in line, you know, what do we do first?
that's why let's get the community to vote and do it and see what we come up
If
with.
you guys say full speed ahead, 10 bags full, we'll give it our absolute best shot, working with Megan or working with our allies that we already have at DHCD and USDA, and overturn some rocks that we may have not
Yep.
fooled with before.
Okay, all right. So-
But the state does like Blackstone. I think Mr. Lee started that, and I think Larry continued it, and I learned a lot from Larry on Fall Street and Table Bottom and all these others.
And I think we can do that to minimize, obviously, your tax increase, but you know there will be an increase,
There's gonna be
whether it's a penny, a half a penny, or 15 pennies.
Okay, let's go on then,
moving on.
moving on, okay.
These are 2 items on the agenda that I'm asking for.
Hold on, the dog waste containment. Can we decide where we want the three, so, cause they are here, we
She
just
came
need to
back and
place
said
them.
anywhere, right? That it was okay to put them anywhere,
But
correct?
you said something about the watershed.
Yeah,
but
but
I
I think
think
she
you
came
talked
back
to her.
and said it was okay.
Yeah,
it
that was
all
my
right.
understanding, that it was okay.
So we originally had said Armory, Tavern area. Where else do we say?
Sea Park,
Sea Park, and Nottaway Rescue Squad said no, correct?
I contacted them and they were worried about trash and debris, and people are gonna rip the bags off and it's gonna
Oh,
blow
yeah,
all
they
over the
will.
place, so how about the cemetery? Because now we allow
I think
pets
you
in there.
could, right now we allow dog walking in there.
That's fine. I mean, you just gotta choose where.
So what's the
obviously,
2?
The three, right?
We only have 2 of them though, don't we?
I thought we had three.
Do we have 3?
but I thought we had 3.
Okay, we have 3, then it's all.
So do y'all wanna recommend the three and then we can get them put up, cause they are here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we need to take it to council for
Yeah,
final?
we'll make the recommendation Monday
Okay.
night, if that's
All
okay.
right.
I moved to place the 3 pet containment receptacles at Swartz Tavern, Armory area, Sea Park, and
Cemetery.
the cemetery.
Are you saying?
Second? Mm-hmm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Got our places done?
We have before you a gentleman named David Varner. David with Lake Country Internet. We have a late addition to your agenda. David has made a presentation to me, I guess on 1 or 2 times and some phone calls, in regards to broadband internet service that he would like to provide as a profit-making venture in the town of Blackstone. I know broadband was one of our goals, how to expand broadband. We have applied for a pre-application to the Tobacco Commission to provide additional broadband service, but that is a 50-50 grant. Any capital costs that are required by that contractor would be a 50% match by the town. Mr. Varner has appeared, and Mr. Varner is not asking the town for any cash contribution. What Mr. Varner is asking for is the town would acquiesce to him putting antennas on the 2 in-town water tanks. I say antennas, it may be a different technology, but the equivalent of 2 antennas. I'm gonna let you do the chatting, but I do think it's an increase in megabytes.
Yes.
Megabytes.
Is this-
from what we're
Is this like LTE or WiMAX?
This would be, we have a couple different technologies. Again, I'm David Varner, Lake Country Internet. I'll give you a little brief background of myself. I've been in the satellite industry for many years. I started out back in 2003, I believe, with Starband, which is one of the first satellite internets to come to the area. We had a whole whopping 1.5 megabits per second. Back in the day, that was the fastest internet that was around, other than dial-up. Fast forward many years, thousands of customers later, a lot of what happens in the internet world, the reason that services are so slow are a couple reasons. The main reason is just the greed of the companies, because they don't care about the customers and the quality of the service. They just keep putting customers on, and what happens is the bandwidth goes down. Kind of in town, I equivalent to, in your home, you go in and open up all the water faucets in the house, they're going to slow down. Same way with the internet. I had an opportunity through Microsoft this past, golly day, I think it was March, April. Microsoft came to us. Microsoft is in Boynton. They came to us. They said, we'd like to you to design a Wi-Fi system for the town of Boynton. I said, okay, and we want you to maintain it for 2 years. Okay, well, what happens at the end of 2 years? And it was kind of like crickets. They didn't have a plan. So I said, well, allow us, we have a great need, for wireless internet, or for a broadband internet that's affordable, that people can afford. And one that's, not overpriced and oversold. So they said, great, run with it. So once we finished the infrastructure for what Microsoft allowed us, or paid us, we took our profits and we built an LTE. I have my own LTE frequency. It's on the 3.65. So we have our radios, and they're nationwide, so we can go anywhere. We're not tied into an area. That is changing here in a couple of years, and we're keeping up with the FCC because they have what's called the CBRS, which is they're opening up more spectrum. The technology's changing a little bit, but for now, we're good. We're keeping up with all of that. But what we've done is we've got a 1 gig fiber in Boynton, which is we're going to propose the same 1 gig fiber here. I did check with Mid-Atlantic Broadband. The fiber's at the base of the water tower, out on Dabbs Lane. I believe there's fiber to the water tower downtown here too. I have not checked or gotten an answer back. But I'll check with, I have the GPS coordinates, so I'm going to send that to Mid-Atlantic Broadband tomorrow. But we're delivering, we say it's up to 30 megabits per second download speed is what we offer our customers. But in reality, we don't throttle our radios. So basically, when you set up a service for companies, you can in the radios, you can say, okay, this customer gets 5 megabits per second, this customer gets 10, whatever they subscribe to. We don't do that. We do things different. I allow the radios unlimited access, so basically there's no speed limit set in the radios. Our main radio has a capacity of 125 megabits per second throughput. So that means if there's 4 or 5 customers on the network, and they're going to get anywhere from 20 to 30, 40 megabits per second or higher. Because not everybody uses the internet at the same time. So these things are also all GPS synchronized. So the tower has a GPS. Each radio at the customer's house has a GPS built into the radio. So the magic of all this happens, all these algorithms and stuff beyond my knowledge. I was in a seminar once and they were telling me all this, and it's like, I don't need to know all that. So, but basically, what we've done is we've established a network in Boynton. Boynton has allowed us to put it on the water towers there, and then the county Mecklenburg in town has allowed us to use their facilities as well. So any county building or anything like that, we've got permission to use. We haven't had to use any, but because the water towers have been perfect. Here, I've looked at the 2 water towers. We've projected going out a 3-mile radius for customers. The radios have the capacity to go out 7 miles, but I always like to cut that in half because that's in a best world scenario where the world is flat. Of course, we know that in Virginia here, there's a lot of trees, a lot of hills, and things like that. So the one thing nice about LTE, with your cell phone, the signal goes through walls, it goes through trees, it goes through buildings, it goes around stuff. So it works very well. What we're asking is to use the water towers and any facilities that you have that we may be able to use, to repeat the signal. Because some areas, we have microcells, or what's called a microcell. And I should have brought one with me, but it's about that big and about that. Did I show you? Okay, I'll make sure I bring one for Monday. But they're not that large. Now, on the water towers themselves, we have a sector antenna. The sector antenna looks like the cell type antennas, a little bit larger. In exchange for using the space, we're going to give the town free internet access. So it's not going to cost you anything here in your buildings. I think we discussed several different locations. But for the community, basically what our plans are right now, we have a terabyte of data that we allow customers. So it's unlimited up to a terabyte. A terabyte is a tremendous amount of data. We had to put a cap on it like that because eventually you're going to have somebody that is an abuser, and you don't want somebody setting up a server or something like that in their house, or having
Average household usage.
Average household usage is anywhere from 150 to 200 gigs per month.
That's if you're streaming.
That's if you're streaming and doing all kinds of stuff. The average, a lot of homes don't even use 100 gigs. And the magic for us is we watch. I get a fiber report every day. Our fiber in Boynton, we hit 10% usage once. So we're nowhere near maxing that out. And we're averaging right now about 45 megabits per second, and that's over a 24-hour period. But that also measures our Wi-Fi also in town. So we have a couple Wi-Fi hotspots that somebody might connect to. They might be far away from the antenna, and they might connect to at 2 megabits per second or 5 megabits per second. So it takes that activity that they're doing as well and lumps that in with our general paid subscriptions as well. We charge $70 a month, unlimited data up to a terabyte. We do have, and there's no contract, no upfront fees. We absorb all that cost. Generally, it costs anywhere from $400 to $450 per client that we install. Again, as part of the money that we've gotten from Microsoft's been very generous to us. Tomorrow we'll find out if our Clarksville project is approved or not. That's coming up as well. But that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm trying to be a market disruptor. A lot of these companies, again, oversubscribe their networks. I watch my bandwidth. I watch what it's doing. I know how many customers I can put on each radio. We don't charge anything different for commercial. A lot of companies have a commercial rate and a residential rate. It's the same. We do have lower price plans. We don't advertise them, but we do have a $35 a month plan. But that is a limited amount of data. We limit the speed, and generally those customers have to be in the local vicinity of the radio tower because we use a less expensive type radio to communicate. But we do have those plans as well, and those are contracted, and then we do charge $10 extra. So
Control the limit, you have commercial and the other, keep the commercial down.
Well, interesting enough, commercial uses the services during the daytime. So where residential use it at nighttime. So when you have those commercial customers, they're actually an added benefit because they're going to get a good fast speed because they're using the service during the daytime when people aren't at home. And at nighttime when the people at home, the commercial businesses are usually closed.
When you say radio, you're talking about that's your router. Is that
correct? Yeah, there's two pieces to the equation. So we have an outdoor antenna, which is our CPE, customer premise equipment, that receives the signal from the tower, from the equipment that's on the radio tower or on the water tower, and then in the house we have a wireless router. And, you know, we have, the wireless routers are all managed. So one of the ways that we're able to control our bandwidth as well, we haven't had to do this yet, but we have the capability of doing that. Say you have 4 TVs in your house, you're streaming on all 4 TVs. Well, the TV could pull anywhere from 3 to 7 megabits per second. So if you have 4 TVs that's, you know, pulling 7 megabits per second, you know, that's what, 28 megabits per second that you're using in that household. Well, if you go in and say, okay, this TV is restricted to 3 megabits per second, which is all it really needs to stream high definition, you know, you've just cut your data usage down to 12 megabits per second. So you basically cut it over half. So there's ways of managing the data that is still going to have a good customer experience. Our goal is to give a good customer experience, quality service at a fair price.
What about hotels and lodging establishments, like I have a bed and breakfast? Is that 5 guest room, that would still be, it would be a commercial product, but it would still be the same?
Same, yep.
So you said $70 a month, unlimited, up to a terabyte.
Terabyte, yes, ma'am.
Should this be referred to, again, shouldn't be kicking the can in the road, but cable TV, internet committee?
Well, I brought it to you guys because of
Because it's our towers, correct? Or our
towers and
water.
buildings and properties. And I think, Mr. Varner, we have it on the agenda for next Monday night, but we just wanted to get in front of a committee tonight. And this is the last committee meeting we've got scheduled before the next council meeting. And I think Mr. Varner would like an answer.
Yeah, and I'll give you kind of a reason. I'm kind of up against the clock. Where we're getting the funding to do this is partially, I mean, it's coming from my pocket, but on the back side of this, what we're doing is we're installing a weather station. So we have another company that we're contracted for. We have 11 counties that we have to put in a point-to-point. This point-to-point is basically, it's a 700 megahertz communication link that's preserving another company's frequency. So the 700 megahertz is usually used for like meter reading for electric companies, train switching, things like that. So basically, this company is paying us to install these systems. What we're using is we're putting in a weather station for that. So we had talked about putting the weather station in for the police department. That way they can monitor the weather and conditions like that. And that's what we use our profits to pay